Alright, so how I usually Dockerize APIs is I create a new Docker file in my directory. So we're going to create a Docker file. And then we're going to come to this Docker file. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a setup stage. And we're going to have this base image be the SDK because your base image has to be the SDK because you need to build, right? You need to build the project. So this is going to be .NET, and it's going to be SDK, and it's going to be 9.0, and we're going to call this as setup stage. This way we have kind of a multi-stage build here. Our worker is going to be as GitHub Copilot guest. It's going to be app. That's pretty standard. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy not everything. We're just going to copy our CS proj. And the reason for that is because the way Docker builds images, it builds them in layers. And so if anything hasn't changed at that particular layer, it'll cache it, which will make building the image quicker. So this way we'll copy the CS proj, and that way it'll essentially cache all of our dependencies. And then we'll run .NET restore. Whoops. .NET restore. Like that. And then we'll copy the rest. And obviously there are things here in our project we don't need to include, and in order to exclude them, we'll just create a docker ignore file and tell them to exclude it. So I'll go ahead and do that now, and I'll say .docker ignore, and this file Docker will use to say, okay, I won't copy any of that stuff. So we don't want to copy in our app settings because we're going to use environment, but we don't have any app settings at the moment, but if we did, we would just use environment variables to override them. So app settings.json needs to be ignored. The Docker file itself can be ignored. We don't need that in it. I think that's all for now. I think the rest of it can all be included. Back to our Docker file. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to actually have a build stage. So in our build stage, what we're going to do is after we've restored, we are going to say from setup stage, and then we are going to run publish release, and I'm not going to say app publish, I'm going to say dist like that. And it could be, I mean, these folders could be whatever you wanted the publish, the out folder to be. That's up to you. It's just this is what I normally do. Okay, then we'll come down here, and this will be our actual final stage. So this will be the actual, what ends up being our actual image. So we'll say from mrc.microsoft.com, and we'll say .net, and we're going to use the ASP.NET image, but instead of 8, it's going to be 9.0, and we'll say as, actually let's make this production stage. It's a little bit more accurate. Production stage. And the reason why there's two different base images, one for production and one for the setup, is the setup image has the whole entire .NET SDK in it, which you need to build the app, but you don't need the entire SDK to run it, which is why you use this smaller base image, which is the ASP.NET image there that I've picked there. And then our working dir is going to be our app, and that is going to be that's just basically the same as the application up here, or the same as the folder that we defined up above. And then what we need to do is we need to copy from our build stage, right? Because in our build stage, we generated this dist file, or this dist folder. And so what we need to do is we need to copy from build stage. We need to copy from app dist to our root. And then we need to expose our default port, which is going to be 8080. That's the default port that the API will start on. when we run this command. And so this is going to be .net, and then we need the DLL. So my DLL is going to be called altgen.api.dll. So that's my entry point. You can write that out. And now we should be able to build the image and actually run it. Do I have Docker running? I don't have Docker running. Let me start up Docker here. But now we should be able to actually give this a go. Looks like it's starting up here. It's probably taxing my machine quite a bit. Let me I'm actually gonna bump up I think I have it set to silent right now. I'm gonna bump it up to turbo. There we go. Okay, so I don't have any containers running right now, as you can see. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna build our image and then run it. So we're gonna cd into source altgen API, and then we are gonna say, I always forget the commands, so I always have to look them up. Docker build command. This is typically the one I go to. Docker tag and publish an image. Yeah, so this is the basic command, but we want to be able to tag it with a name. So where's our tagging? So we'll say Docker key is going to be altgen API and then the source. So this should build our image. And if I wrote that Docker file right, hopefully it works. So it's already at our production stage, so that's good. Oh no, that's our setup stage. Now it's at our build stage. So now it's and production build. Okay. So now we should be able to say Docker. Is it Docker list? I can't remember what the commands are. Docker help. Docker. I want to list images. There we go. Docker images. Docker images. So there's the one we just built. Altgen API. So now what I should be able to say is I should be able to say Docker run. Docker run altgen API. And there it is. The 8080 port. But that's the port in the container. So if I go to Docker, you can see that's a funny name, Naughty Jepson. But you can see this doesn't have any ports mapped to it. So I actually need to map some of my host ports to my container, to the port that the container is actually running on. And that I should have done in the Docker command. So Docker run -- help. It's a dash. What's the port? Let's see. Shift find port. Expose. No, I don't want to expose. Oh no, so it is the P command. It just stands for something different than port. Publish a container's port to the host. Okay, so, and I always forget to, I think it's Docker run -p, and I think I give it my host port, and then I map that to my container port, like this, and then I can say altgen API, then if I go back to my, see now, so now I have two instances running. I have this guy and this guy. This one I can actually delete. So this one should be listening on HTTP 66. So let me open that. Let's see. Let's try to make a request to it here. Yep, and so you can see there's the request, and obviously it failed, and it failed because the key I'm giving it's bogus. But it's listing. And actually, let's see if I can I add a key here without exposing myself? I think I can. Hold on. Let me take this off screen. I'm going to add a variable here. Let's see, new collection. We'll call this alt-gen. Create, save, put that in there. And then a variable, say Gemini API key. And then I've got that over here, so let me grab that real quick. App settings, no, it's my test settings. Yank. Let's close that again. Let's go back to my program. And then here is going to be that. Just like this, just like this. Okay, now what I should be able to do, Gemini API key there. I don't want to expose that. Oh, not as a param in the body. That. Well, it failed, but I'm not sure why it failed. Could be something with their services up, but in any event, we now have our API running in a Docker container, and now all I have to do in order to deploy this is I just need to build a GitHub workflow that when I merge to main, I build a new version of the image, I push that image to Docker Hub, and then I log into my server, pull that image down, and run it. Essentially, that's basically going to be the idea here. But this is how I approach Dockerizing an API like this. This is kind of, obviously this could be much more complex if you have a lot of other projects in your repo that need to also be included as part of your Docker file. Like if you had a class library or some other libraries that you needed to include as part of this Docker file to run your API, this would be a little bit more complex. But if you're just building a single API and all the code you need is in that single project, this is kind of a good place, I feel like, to start from setting up kind of a base Docker file so that you can run your API in a container. So I hope you find that helpful. I know it took me a little while to figure out how to do this, so I just want to make sure and save you some time, share out my learnings in hopes that somebody else might be able to benefit from it.